So Mark, I feel like you're discounting and you're asking for approvals for discounts quite often. Why do you feel like that is the tactic that you're using to get these deals across the line?
I think most enterprise buyers expect a discount, and when I show up and just do list price, the first thing they ask is what is the discount? So I'm just kind of like trying to jump ahead of the ship.
Maybe tell me why you think that that is their initial reaction when you get to a pricing conversation.
I'm not sure. I think they come in like this is going to be expensive and I'm going to drill you down.
Why do they feel that it's expensive relative to maybe the value that you've expressed to them?
Probably because I'm not creating enough value to justify the price, and so there's a price value mismatch.
Why do you think it's getting to that point?
Maybe I'm not finding the right problem or articulating the solution in the right way.
Why you think the reason for that is?
I probably am not talking either to the right people or getting to the right pains.
So it sounds like we may be having some challenges identifying potential champions and understanding how they see value.
That was a super cool experience for me as a person.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this leadership episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. I'm live in studio with my co-host, Mark Kosklo, and the one and only Jordan Chavez. If you're not familiar with him, he put on two of the greatest leadership episodes we've had in the past. He is a 3-time President's Club member when he was previously leading teams over at Navan. He's now building the enterprise go-to-market motion at Actively.ai, and also previously at Navan, going in reverse order. He got 8 promotions in 6 years. That's like 1.75 or something like that per year. I'm not in finance, I'm in sales. Mark, why should people listen?
There's one thing that matters in sales leadership more than anything else: coaching. And I think we got so deep into coaching today of how to find root causes, create plans to help people get better, and make them feel comfortable doing it. I think it's an amazing episode.
And a 3, 2, 1, let's roll. Alrighty, Jordan, welcome back to the show. We start every leadership show with your top 3 actionable takeaways. Let's get your 3.
All right. Number 1, motivation mapping. During the interview process, during onboarding, and ultimately in continuous one-on-ones and quarterly check-ins, you're going to want to really diagnose what are the motivators. There's a primary motivator and usually a secondary motivator that might change over time. They live in 4 categories typically: growth, autonomy, recognition, and money. Now, at the end of the day, secondary one will change. So you want to understand, what is their why? Someone coming on board to simply make the biggest paycheck that they can. They don't care about being recognized. They don't care about growing into the organization. Or there may be someone who cares deeply about recognition, and ultimately money is a secondary motivator for them.
I'm motivated deeply by your second takeaway. What is it?
Number 2, performance development plans. These are PDPs, not PIPs. So make it very clear to the rep when you're setting this meeting, typically 1 hour, one-on-one at the very beginning of each quarter, that this is to help them grow their skill set, not to inspect their past performance in a way that might, make them feel like they're going to be on a plan. So ultimately, 1 hour, you're going to set expectations that they should look at this across 4 key skills, potentially pipeline generation, deal execution, multi-threading, whatever those key categories are. You're going to rate it from 1 to 4: thriving, performing, underperforming, or failing. Often people are going to be failing at certain skills when they're very early in their role. That's okay. We're going to create a plan to really get to the root cause of any gaps that exist, create 1 or 2 actionable items that they can focus on a weekly basis. And that's going to be your check-in for the rep every weekly one-on-one to see where we're tracking against these tactical takeaways.
Boom. What's number 3?
Number 3, getting to the root cause of those skill gaps. This plays into the PDP, but ultimately we're going to use a 5 why framework. These 5 whys will pinpoint really where a rep is potentially struggling. They may see that as the gap itself. We know different. We know that there is going to be a root cause that we need to get to. So we're going to ask, why is this happening? And then keep going deeper until we get to that root cause. So an example of this may be, hey, we see a low conversion from stage 1 to stage 2. Why is that the case? The rep may be lacking confidence. Why is that the case? They are afraid to push back against this prospect. Well, why is that the case? Maybe they don't feel super confident in themselves pushing back. Well, why is that the case? Their preparation just was not up to snuff and they didn't have that going in. So ultimately what we're doing is creating this growth map to understand, hey, these root causes, we can actually treat the root cause, not the symptom.
I love this 5 why thing. I think that what it does is it creates a intellectual, honest conversation, and there's some science behind it. You can only ask somebody why 5 times before they lose the ability to continue to lie, because the lie gets so deep that they can't just keep going. But I'm interested, as you're doing the whys, you're not just saying, why is that the case 5 times in a row? Help me, like maybe we should do a quick role play. Make me your rep.
Pick an example.
5 why me, man.
So let's assume that for Mark, poor Mark.
Say I'm discounting too much.
Okay, Mark is discounting too much.
I'm maybe a discounter. No, I'm not.
So Mark, I feel like you're discounting and you're asking for approvals for discounts quite often. I'd be curious, why do you feel like that is, the tactic that you're using to get these deals across the line?
I think most enterprise buyers expect a discount. And when I show up and just do list price, the first thing they ask is, what is the discount? So I'm just kind of like trying to jump ahead of the ship.
Okay. Maybe tell me why you think that is their initial reaction when you get to a pricing conversation.
I'm not sure. I think, they think it's probably too expensive. I mean, I think that's how they come in, like there's going to be expensive and I'm going to drill you down.
Okay. Why do they feel that it's expensive relative to maybe the value that you've expressed to them?
Probably because I'm not creating enough value to justify the price. And so there's a price value mismatch.
Okay. So during that value conversation, why do you think it's getting to that point?
Maybe I'm not finding the right problem or articulating the solution in the right way that helps them understand like how much actual value there is there.
And what do you think the reason for that is?
I probably am not talking either to the right people or getting to the right pains.
Okay, so it sounds like we may be having some challenges identifying potential champions and understanding how they see value.
So let's just drop out of the role play for a second. Yeah. I'm going to just tell you what just happened to me. That was a super cool experience for me as a person. Because what I had to do is every time I would get asked why, I had to dig. I had to actually come up with a reason. I had to think about what was going on. And while this was a role play and I was making it up, I was trying to actually think about certain situations I've been in. And I think what I enjoyed the most about it is I think I was starting to self-diagnose. Mm-hmm. You were helping me see how do I get down to the root cause myself. And I felt like when you said your wrap up, so what I'm hearing is, I was like, yes, that's exactly what I was hearing. But I felt like I understood that already because of the process. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I think it's challenging, right? And it's easy to say, oh, well, why? That could be people get on the defensive, right? You want to create that psychological safety where people can really go down that path together, right? You want to lean in and feel vulnerable. And I think, whether it be setting the expectation or sharing my own experience as a leader, gets reps to feel more comfortable going into that kind of experiment together. It really does. They need to lead themselves to water. You can't lead them yourself.
What did you hear about his why questions? Did you notice a pattern or did you notice what he was doing as he was asking those?
It was very non-antagonistic.
No.
In the tone. It wasn't like, why are you doing that? It was like, why do you think the prospect feels that way? It was like you both trying to solve the problem together as opposed to, why do you do that?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's one way you can make your rep feel less defensive around them, is it didn't feel like you were trying to figure out what Mark did wrong. You're trying to understand the intent behind why he did certain things. And I think the other thing that this exercise gives you the opportunity to do is there was a point where you had asked Mark, okay, why do you feel like they're asking for a discount in the first place? And Mark said, oh, it's because they don't see the value or it's too expensive. And you might be able to challenge the why at that point by saying, what if it was actually the prospect just wanted a good deal? And you can start to reframe how a rep is thinking. When you ask them these why questions, you understand what's going through Mark's head, and then you can dig into the root cause of why a rep made a certain decision. And then you can help them see prospect interactions in a different way. Yeah. And you don't do that if you just say, instead of discounting, do this instead.
Yep.
I think what was interesting to me was why questions by their nature are aggressive. Why is your conversion rate bad? Now I get set into a defensive mode. I think what you did awesome and demonstrated was instead of making an aggressive why question, it was, well, why do you think that way? What you're asking me is Mark, what is your expert opinion on what you think was going on with them that made you do that? Which felt very not threatening. And so, the other thing you could do is 5 whys is the question, but really what it is digging deep. How and what questions are viewed as much less aggressive than why questions? How do you think you're doing it now, right? And so I think what you really demonstrated was you can ask why questions in a non-aggressive way that feels collaborative versus accusatory.
I think one of the biggest things that can be a challenge for people is we lie to others, but we also lie to ourselves, right? And so I'm not saying that you're lying to yourself in that, but what we are trying to investigate is there something that I have control over that I can change that will actually impact this outcome?
What are other ways where you prevent your reps from getting defensive? Or how do you know when your rep is even in the mode where they're open to hearing the feedback from you?
It's really interesting. So I think of it almost as an anecdote. So there's this concept of seller deficit disorder, right? You don't know me, you don't know my business, and you don't listen. So I think as a manager, there may be this kind of concept of manager deficit disorder. Hey, manager, you're not on the front lines with me. You're not on these calls. You're not the one who is getting these objections. So you don't necessarily understand me and what I am dealing with. So I think the first step is really just to the point of leveling with the person. Hey, I understand what you're feeling. I was in your shoes. Obviously, you want to show up and be in their shoes, be a part of their, co-piloting them on these deals to really help them diagnose these things. But again, I think it's being vulnerable. It's telling them when you don't know things, telling them, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but we need to think about this in a different way. Have the person lead themselves there as opposed to you doing it yourself.
You both have stepped into brand new revenue organizations or sales teams where all of your reps are looking at you and they're like, does this guy know what he's talking about? He doesn't know my business. Why is he posting on LinkedIn? What's the nonsense he's putting out there? And you get the sense that there are certain reps who are very eager to be coached, but then there are other reps who feel like you need to earn their respect first. And I'm curious, how do you go about approaching those reps?
Understanding what is most important to them, break bread, as kind of cheesy as that might sound, really getting to know the person, because I think there is, and I believe someone who was recently on the podcast talked about this, right? Mask on versus mask off. I don't want to be someone different at work than I am at home. And I think that level of vulnerability, whether or not people believe in your ability to coach them to run a deal cycle with the level of efficacy that they would expect or believe that they should have, I think ultimately that trust goes a long way in saying, hey, we're going to figure this out together. I understand you may not trust me fully, but I'm going to prove it to you in how I show up, in how I am listening and taking your feedback just as much as I expect you to take mine. So I think it's always a two-way street, right? And so that respect comes from obviously how you've done it before, but it also is how you continuously improve and even give yourself coaching and show the rep what you're trying to improve as well.
I think a lot of sales leaders approach it as people respect me. I always approach it as I have no respect in this room. And I think my job is to build, and we talk about this a lot, street cred. And so to me, there's a difference between coaching and modeling. And a lot of people can coach and tell you what to do, right? But who can actually step into the call and actually do it? And I would say in the beginning, when you're trying to build that street cred and that stuff that lets you really coach, you should be more modeling than coaching. Model first, then coach. Then after that, you can start to coach and then model. But when people see, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm the best discovery person on the world, but I'm pretty good at discovery. And when people see me do discovery, guess what? I earn the right to coach them on it. And when they see how I deal with an objection, I earn the right to coach them on it. And so I would encourage sales leaders in the beginning, you got to get that street cred. The only way to get the street cred is to model the stuff that you're going to coach. That gives you access to the coaching.
Where a lot of sales leaders screw up is they come in and they take bull in a china shop approach. And what they do is they're like, this isn't how I used to do it. It must be wrong. And not only do they just come in and say, this is how we should do it, they discount everything that the team has already done. And that's oftentimes another place where you lose respect, is you haven't acknowledged anything that the team is doing well today. You're just assuming that it's all done incorrectly. And that's the definition of how you get a knee-jerk reaction from your team.
One of the things that you said about this personal development plan that I immediately had a reaction to, I don't know if it was good or bad, but I sat up, was we let the reps tell us what they need help with.
Yep.
So does this 5 why stuff help a rep identify what's in that plan? Help me understand your thinking around why you would let a rep tell you what they need work with versus you showing them data that says this is what you do need help with.
Yeah, so there's 2 pieces to it. One, the rep should come with preparation across those categories of where do I think my gaps are. I'm going to be doing the same exercise. We're going to compare notes. So first I get to kind of understand, how do they see themselves? What are they reflecting on? Did they just kind of say, oh, I'm not hitting this quota or I'm not doing X? How deep did they really think about this? That gives me an indicator of how invested they are in their own success, right? Beyond that, I'm not expecting them to get to the root cause. That is an exercise that we have to go through together because, again, most people are going to say, this is what's happening. And they believe that there are either things that are outside of their control that are causing that to happen, or maybe they just need to be better about time management. So the whole point of the PDP is to, again, create space for people to be vulnerable, setting the expectation. This is not a way for us to performance manage you out of the business or put you on a PIP that is going to then, make it so that you can either be successful here or not. They should know where they stand at any given time. And if a rep doesn't feel like they know where they stand within the organization, I need to make that clear. And that's a miss on my part as a leader. And so I set the framework of what are the 4 key areas of skills that a rep needs to have. If it is an environment where a full cycle AE, prospecting is one. Deal execution and discovery is another. Maybe a post-sale account management is another aspect of their role. So we're going to predefine what those categories are and even create an abacus of what lives within those, right? Gives them some examples to think through so that they can self-identify that. I'm not expecting them to be able to know what I would look for in, a gap or a skill gap. So there's a little bit of hand-holding that might go on in preparation for this to give them a little bit of a priming of where you see these potential gaps. But I do want them to ensure that they are doing that reflection themselves.
What's going on, folks? There are literally only 2 things that you need to nail as a salesperson if you want to make it to President's Club. The first is your ability to fill your calendar up with meetings and create new pipeline, aka prospecting. The other thing you have to nail is your ability to drive those deals to close. And since you've made it this far in the video, I've got a gift to help you do both of those things. If you use the code YouTube at 30mpc.com/courses, you'll actually get $50 off our 2 best courses to help you nail both the creation of pipeline and the closing of pipeline. The first course is called Cold Calls to President's Club. And in that course, we teach you what to do, what to say, and how to sound in every single part of a cold call, from your call opener to how you pitch, to how you overcome objections, to voicemails and gatekeepers and more. The second course is our discovery course, which is focused on how to sell in a way that doesn't feel like selling. And in that course, we teach you how to uncover massive 6- and 7-figure business problems that companies actually want to pay to solve. And we'll teach you the way to structure your calls. We'll teach you the questions to ask. We'll teach you how to get to the decision maker and drive timeline and make discovery something that you know how to do effortlessly. And again, if you go to 30mpc.com/courses or go to the link below and use that code YouTube, you'll get $50 off any of the courses. I will see you at President's Club.
One of the things I see that is the biggest barrier of change is pushing too much change down the throats of reps. So I got my PDP, but I'm sure you're also running org level trainings. How do you think about balancing, hey, this is something we're doing for everybody versus this is what we're doing for you? Is the thing that you're doing for everybody part of the PDP too? And is it all inclusive, or how are you managing to make sure you're not just overwhelming people with coaching?
Yeah. Well, and overwhelming yourself as well,
right.
right? If I'm managing 6, 8 reps, there's a lot of different areas depending on their tenure, depending on what their background is, of where they can improve. So what I want to try and do is understand, where are the themes? Where are the broad themes? Are we as an entire team missing on discovery? Do we need to get better at identifying and potentially testing champions? That's something that will then inform how I create enablement and do this at a team level. If there's something that I see that a rep could really improve on that the rest of the team could, I might even say, hey, you should teach this to the team. I want to empower you. If that's something that you care about, you want to grow, you want to become a leader someday, there's ways to scale that as opposed to me just, beating that drum to every single member of the team. Interaction and taking ownership over their own development is super critical.
I want you to imagine the face of one of your reps, either in the past that has struggled with discovery. And they come in, they're like, hey, I think I'm underperforming at discovery. How do you go about figuring out what the root cause is or diagnosing where you should focus your attention on discovery?
Yeah, it's a great question. It all starts with the 5 whys, but doesn't just end there. I think there is a gut feeling that you will end up getting to as a leader of knowing, okay, this person clearly can identify, once we get down to that root cause, it's kind of this aha moment of, oh, wow, I do understand that maybe I am targeting a wrong persona, or asking this person only surface level questions and not getting to that second and third level pain. It's a dance, right? You want to get someone to really tell you and get to that root cause through those 5 whys. But a lot of these things are interwoven. So what do I mean by that? I had a rep once who was very, very good at prospecting. She was incredible at getting meetings. means, through cold calls, emails, LinkedIn, really omni-channel. What we ended up identifying was that her conversion rates from kind of the scope stage into more vendor of choice were completely falling off, and she was not hitting her quota. So if I were to just say, well, you're not very good at executing a go no go meeting, or creating a business case, we could have diagnosed the wrong thing. What we ended up identifying through kind of 5 whys, getting deeper into why was she targeting this person, why was this persona not getting her to where she needed to go. Ultimately, she was scared of having a conversation with the CFO. She had this kind of fear of messing up in such a high stakes environment. Yeah. So I needed to create, a structure with her that allowed her to say, hey, it's okay to fail in some of these situations, but we're going to continuously get better, and talk about, let's up-level your conversation to a C-level conversation, as opposed to speaking to people who you feel comfortable speaking to that might be more below the line.
What are the other coaching rhythms you have with your team? Are you doing, I know you've used AI for call reviews in the past. I think we talked about how you reviews calls in the past or deals in the past in a previous episode. Where are the different points where you're inserting yourself as a coach in your business on a weekly basis?
I think having a structured operating cadence is important. We have talked about that in the past, of knowing and creating expectations of where you will be inspecting, where you will be open to people getting feedback from you, having people really get you involved in deals. Frankly, I think the best way to do it is just to be in the boat, right? And that's where there's this concept of futsal, right? So soccer, obviously, football for anyone international, is played on a massive pitch. You have 11 players right on each side, and the stakes are very high, let's say, in that environment. You're not going to learn as much because the feedback loop may be elongated, right? Because the time it takes for me to kick a ball from here down to the 30-yard box is going to be very different. If I'm in a futsal environment, it's a lot of short passing. It's very small tactical, movements, a lot of small passes, and there's a lot more feedback. Yeah, small field. There's a lot more feedback that you're getting instantly. And so I think of this as almost like a futsal environment, where if there's ways in which I can create these very quick feedback loops, it allows me to not have to go weeks or months without understanding or diagnosing something that could have been changed a lot earlier.
So what does that look like? Is it just you having your reps invite you on every call that they're on? Is it you doing weekly call reviews? How does that actually play out?
Yeah, I think it can depend on where the rep is in their development. So let's say there's someone who is having a lot of trouble in landing a cold call, and again, we could say, well, maybe it's your call volume, maybe it's these other things, but ultimately it doesn't replace the fact that I might need to sit on a call with them or sit next to them. And the second that they land a cold call and deliver that pitch, it doesn't convert to a meeting, we have quick feedback, right? They give me, hey, what did I do well? Where could I improve? I do the same thing, and then we do it over and over again. What I often do for role plays is you do the same role play 3 times. So we do a role play first. You show me what you're doing. Maybe we are role playing a discovery call. We'll do it for 2 minutes. We'll pause, give quick feedback, and we'll do it again. We'll pause, give quick feedback, and we'll do it a 3rd time. And by the 3rd time, you're pretty much ready to go and actually be out into the wild and do it, and you feel that confidence. I think the repetition early is really critical.
How do you look at progression in all this? I got my spreadsheet. It's got my last 6 quarters. How do you, they're not going to do good at everything. What is your expectations? How do you teach your managers and people like that to make sure that they have the right expectations for what this is going to do? Because because you write it down on a sheet doesn't mean that's going to magically happen.
It relates to goal setting in some ways, right? So you're breaking down a larger incentive into smaller chunks so that people can really digest it. So whatever that goal is, their skills, we know what we need to teach them to get to that next level. If it's going to be a higher level segment that they're operating in, if it's going to be a management role that they're going to take on, it's a map, right? So it's not necessarily it's not a scorecard on a daily basis. Yeah. So we don't need to get so deep into this, but we should have a feeling of where someone is developing. And if they're not developing towards a certain skill, it's an early indicator that there's something that is holding them back, either from a skill perspective or a will perspective.
So both of you guys are big on practicing, not just waiting for the next time a rep runs into the competitor 17 objection next year to practice. And so I'm curious, Jordan, when you're doing role plays, with your reps. Could you give an example of how you set it up and how you run an effective sales role play?
Yeah. So there's a few different ways, and it really depends on what you're trying to role play. But I think let's use discovery as a good example. We're going to create a time-bound environment. So we're going to say, hey, we only are doing this for 5 minutes. I want them to bring a real example with me. We'll have other reps involved as well. Again, set the expectation that this is a safe place. We are going to fail over and over and over until we improve and get it right. I will often start myself as the account executive and show them how it's done first and foremost, have them give me feedback, give myself feedback, and then we'll let someone else go. And we'll continuously do that over and over. So what I mean by that is, again, we'll have a rep say, we're going to do discovery for this 5 minutes. We're going to stop and give feedback to you. You're going to give a self-reflection, and then we're going to do it over again. And then we're going to do it over again. And then we're going to do it a third time. Hate to use a sports analogy, but do you think Jalen Brunson only does a step back three in the middle of a game?
Yeah, right.
Of course not, right? So it's obviously a very high leverage activity that he is doing, and it's incredibly, the skills involved are very, very challenging, but he's done that thousands, if not tens of thousands of times prior to doing that in a game.
There's two big concepts. The one is usually the way a rep does something the first time is how they'll do it forever. Mm-hmm. And so you got to get into change behavior mode because they're locked in. And the second thing is most reps confuse comfort with success. I'm good at my demos because I'm comfortable in how I do them. They don't look at what is the actual output of those demos. And so we have to help reps understand, listen, lots of times you get locked in and the first way you do it, you do it. And then because you're comfortable with it, you think it works. And we have to do that. And like you just saw, I just did with Jordan, I'm a big, let's just role play. Yeah. If we're talking about a problem, let's do it right now. And here's again, the model versus the coach. I will, if I feel like I have the right relationship, I'll be like, hey, let's do this. And I'll take on the buyer, you're the seller, we'll role play. But if I don't have a great relationship, I'll be like, you know what? We're going to role play, but I'm going to be the seller. You're going to be the buyer. And I'll model what I want them to do. Yeah. And I think that's just like, you got to get used to just like popping role plays on people all the time, every day. That is a cultural thing. And once it gets used to it, then you'll walk down your sales floor and you'll see 2 reps doing it to themselves because it's part of the culture.
Jordan, amazing show. We have to move to the final question. We talked about a lot of good coaching habits that leaders can exhibit. What is one bad coaching habit that every leader should break so that all teams get a little bit better?
Make it about themselves and not about the rep. Typically, people want to feel like they have something to deliver. They want to give their own feedback. They want to make themselves feel good, but really it's not about you. It is about the rep themselves. So it's easy to say, hey, I'm going to tell you this and it's going to make me feel like I've done my job. But ultimately, if it doesn't land, if it doesn't actually resonate, and if it doesn't actually feel authentic to that person, it's not going to improve anyone's skill set. So ultimately, you've got to make sure that you're understanding how they receive feedback to make it land.
In Chris Voss's words, you need to be looking for that's right, not you're right.
Yes.
And if you coach the rep the way that they needed to be coached, you hear that's right.
Yep.
Dude, amazing show. Everyone hang up for a 60-second recap coming up soon. Oh, and we have some Easter egg questions at the end, so don't fully hang up. Alrighty, Mark, time for a 2x2 recap from this episode with Jordan Chavez. What do you have for your 2?
Gotta love my 5 whys. That's number 1. In discovery, if you don't get the second and third level pain, you don't get a deal. And guess what? If you don't get the root cause in coaching, you don't get change. So you got to use those 5 whys to get deep to find root cause. And then the second thing that I really like that you're doing, the way you do the whys. It's not just about doing them, it's how you do them and making me go on a journey of self-discovery that you're guiding me on, not a journey of you pounding me with everything I'm doing wrong so that I feel like crap afterwards.
Number 3, the quarterly PDP. That rhymes. So you want to map out the top 4 categories that matter for your business. Maybe it's prospecting, discovery, deal execution, and upsell. And then you want to have your reps rate themselves on a 1-4 scale in each area. And that will give you the first place where you can start doing the 5 whys and diagnosing the root cause. From there, you want to identify a clear KPI for each gap and 1 to 2 weekly actions for them to go and solve that gap. And then lastly, number 4, if one of those gaps is discovery, the best thing you can do is role play a lot. So set up the situation and don't role play it once and then forget about it. Go role play it 5, 10, 15 times. And Mark gave some great advice on if you don't have trust with that rep yet, you do it first. Show that you can get in the game. Folks, if you liked this one, this reminded me a lot of a newsletter and an episode that Kevin Dorsey was on, KD, where he talked about the importance of practice in the way that he runs his one-on-one. So he broke down his entire one-on-one formula and how he runs practice role plays in a step-by-step newsletter. So go check that one out in the show notes. And everyone, we will see you on the next one. Rapid fire. Number one, what's the number one hiring mistake a sales manager can make?
Not treating their candidate pipeline like a sales pipeline. People are not always ready to buy. They will not always be ready to jump, even though they may be a perfect candidate, they may be an A player. You want to maintain that relationship over time for when it is right for them. And ultimately, you need to nurture.
Number two, what's the number one sales interview question you can ask a rep?
Armand, based on this conversation, what do you think I think of you?
Ooh. Somebody's done that a few times.
Yes.
What do you get out of it?
Gets people kind of taken aback, just like you did, right? What I want people to understand or to express to me is how they can actually get emotional intelligence across. They are going to sense what I'm giving in the interview. They're going to sense how I am responding or what questions I'm asking. And I want them to be able to quickly diagnose that for me.
If I'm an SDR and I want to get promoted to AE, what are you looking for?
When a lot gets thrown on your plate, when you have way too many tasks, way too many enablement sessions, all these things that your managers and other people are asking of you, do you still fall back on these processes that are going to make sure that you're successful and hit your numbers, hit your KPIs? The AE role is your role times 3, right? And so what I need to know is that you can rely on these kind of processes and this foundation to continue to be successful.
Lastly, what is the number one thing that makes a great sales leader?
Showing up. There's many ways to show up, so it's just as much the way you show up, but you got to do it consistently, continuously, and with oftentimes a smile on your face when you may not feel it. People will notice, and I think showing up is 90% of the battle.
What does that look like?
What does that look like? Being available for reps when they need it, showing up by asking them, how are they doing? Really being prepared for every single interaction that you are asking them to be prepared for as well. So it's showing and, practicing what you preach.
Boom. That's a wrap.